Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it actually a great badge of honor. I do. It's a great badge of honor because I'm being indicted for you. Want to try and demean and hurt us, all of us. You know, they're not indicting me, they're indicting you. I just happen to be standing in their way.
So despite what Donald Trump says on the campaign trail and wants his followers to believe, it's important to remember that he is not the victim here.
No, not big, strong Donald. It's not like almost 4 years after losing, he's still playing that tiny violin at his rallies.
But I love Atlanta, so they have a DA there that doesn't do anything about crime. All she does is focus, let's get Trump, we gotta get him. He made a phone call, it was so perfect, it was so good. This was better than the perfect call I made to Ukraine. Why didn't the corrupt Marxist prosecutors bring these radical and unjustified charges against me 2.5 years ago? They had 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
But as we follow the many threads of this enormous investigation, what often falls through the cracks are the victims that Trump left in his wake as he attempted to cling to power. And there are many.
Me. As points go, this one made by former White House press secretary turned MSNBC host Jen Psaki is a solid one, and one that is not discussed enough. She spent the best part of her weekend segment reminding the American people that amidst the torrent of Trump tantrums, there are people out there who very much suffered at the hands of his recklessness, and that despite his best efforts to convince everyone otherwise, he's not the victim.
When we talk about the efforts to overturn the 2020 election, we understandably focus on the perpetrators, the people responsible. Donald Trump and a web of his underlings who tried to subvert the will of the voters, the will of the American public. And that's especially true right now as we await an indictment in that case and comb through all the details. But as we follow the many threads of this enormous investigation, what often falls through the cracks are the victims that Trump left in his wake as he attempted to cling to power. And there are many. For starters, those victims include the American people. Trump attempted to disenfranchise more than 13 million voters who cast their ballots for Joe Biden in the 7 states that he and his allies tried to overturn. Had that effort succeeded, even in part, Trump would have essentially invalidated the 81 million votes Biden received across the country, which, by the way, is more than any candidate had ever received in American history. Then there's President Joe Biden himself, who, despite the facts, may always be viewed by Trump's followers as illegitimate. According to a Monmouth poll conducted in May, 2/3 of Republicans still believe the falsehood that Joe Biden only won because of voter fraud. The victims of Trump's scheme also include countless election workers and officials who have been subjected to harassment campaigns and death threats just for doing their jobs. Ruby Freeman was an election worker in Georgia who was forced to pack up and leave her home of 20 years due to repeated threats on her life. But she and her daughter, Shay Moss, testified before the January 6th committee about the damage all of those lies caused them.
I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security. All because a group of people, starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
Don't do nothing anymore. I don't want to go anywhere. I second guess everything that I do. It's affecting my life in a major way. In every way.
All because of lies. And just this week, Rudy Giuliani admitted that the statements he made about Ms. Freeman and Ms. Moss were, in fact, false. You could also argue that the Republican Party itself was a victim of Trump's scheme to overturn the election. In the 2022 midterms, almost every Republican in battleground states who denied or questioned the results of the 2020 election lost. Then, of course, there were the victims of the violent insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. That includes the actual targets of the attack that day, every sitting member of Congress and members of their staff, as well as Donald Trump's own vice president, who came within feet of a mob that wanted to hang him. But it was the Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police, and other law enforcement officers who suffered the most direct and severe physical harm at the hands of the MAGA insurrectionists. Death is the only remedy for what's in the Capitol building. For every single one of those Capitol law enforcement officers, death is the remedy. That is the only remedy they get. That is what all of those men and women in uniform were facing that day. So despite what Donald Trump says on the campaign trail and wants his followers to believe, it's important to remember that he is not the victim here. The victims are the institutions, the people, and the very foundations that have helped sustain our democracy for over 240 years. And Trump's lies about the election remain a threat as long as people in power choose to use them for political advantage.
And she's spot on here, because while his Truth Social page reads like that of a school bully who is held to account for the first time, across the country there are those that still feel the real-life repercussions of his actions.
To uphold the Constitution, that's why people go to court and they swear an oath to tell the truth. Now, they take their shocking nihilism about what's true and what's false, and they convert it to this entire Congress. And it all starts, of course, with January 6th. And before that, the presidential election. All starts with a big lie. Donald Trump's big lie. Well, they say, well, who knows? Maybe he won, maybe he didn't. You say Joe Biden's president, we say Donald Trump's president. Nonsense. We saw them come and descend upon this chamber, this Congress, wounding and injuring 150 of our police officers, breaking people's noses, breaking people's fingers, putting people in the hospital. And already they're back on the news with big lies saying, no, it was a tourist visit. Like these real tourists up here who have to come and watch representatives in the United States Congress say there's no difference between truth and lies.
And despite all of it, he still remains the clear frontrunner for the GOP in 2024, which in retrospect tells you all you need to know about the party of family value and their supporters.
They're at the top of their game. We have somebody that's not at the top of his game, never was at the top of a game, never was. We have a guy who's a dumb son of a bitch, and to allow this to happen.
Checking in on a few of those supporters at his rally in Pennsylvania, is anyone surprised?
Good. I'm here to guarantee Trump gets back in and get rid of the corruption that's in the White House right now. It's a disgrace. Joe Biden's a disgrace to this country.
He's a disgrace, and so are all the left and the rhinos, the globalists.
They jail them all. Jail them all.
I agree with you on that. Ma'am, about President Trump.
Well, I like Trump as a person. I know some really good friends of his, and he's for the American people, like he said. And I think most importantly, I like his lower taxes and his Christian values that he stands for.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book, and you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favorite Bible verses are, and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite.
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like.
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible. The whole Bible is an incredible. I joke. Very much so. They always hold up The Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time.
Hey, Midas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.